Introduce you to Pat Hastings. Pat Hastings, MS, LCDP, is the author of an award-winning book entitled Simply a Woman of Faith. An internationally recognized inspirational speaker, workshop and retreat leader, spiritual coach, psychotherapist, and radio talk show host, I'm ad-libbing here. Pat Hastings has improved the lives that she's touched throughout the world. Pat's professional...
So I'm going to share with you my story from fear to faith. And I think now, especially now in this economy, there's a lot of fear. People are afraid, the stock market, the health, the government, everywhere you look, there's a lot of negativity and a lot of fear. And we can really get caught up in that fear. And what I'm here to say to you tonight is that when you connect with the spirit within, you don't have to move in fear. You don't have to tell you about my book, because that is my story. About 25 years ago, I knew that I was going to write a book, because everybody kept telling me, you need to write a book, Pat. You have such faith stories. And I would say, yeah, someday I'll write a book. But it was always in the back of my mind that I was going to write a book. And one of my favorite stories that I love to share is what I call my blouse story. My ex-husband was out of work for a year. We had 4 children under the age of 10. So you can imagine it was really difficult. We were on welfare and we were getting food stamps. And this one particular day, I was waiting to pick up the children from school. And I had some time to kill, so I went to the local boutique and I walked in. And in the back was the clearance sign. So I decided, well, I want to go see what clothes are on sale. I had $10 in my pocketbook, and that was for milk and bread on the way home. So I was looking through the clothes, and I found this blouse that I just fell in love with. And as I was reluctantly putting the blouse back, it was $10, and I had $10 in my pocketbook, but that was for milk and bread on the way home. So as I was putting my blouse back, that little voice inside, and we all have it, it's called intuition. You know, you hear that little voice says, call someone, and you call them, and they say, oh, I was just thinking about you. Well, I was used to paying attention to that little voice, and that little voice said, buy it, and I will provide. And I stood there in the store, and I said, is that you, God, or is that me just wanting to buy the blouse? I decided to pay attention to that little voice, and I bought the blouse. Picked up the kids from school, and of course I didn't go home. I didn't buy milk and bread because I had already spent the money. I went home and I grabbed the mail. And then there was a little white envelope, and it said, to Pat. And I said, gee, I wonder who this could be from. I opened it up, and there was a card in the white envelope, and it said, to Pat, from the son of a carpenter. And there was a $10 bill in there. Did you hear that? Most people go, ah! So somebody had listened to that small, still voice within and decided to follow through and sent me that card at the perfect and right time. So I screamed, and my daughter came running in, who was 4 years old, and she said, Mom, what's wrong? And I said, God loves us so much. And she just looked at me and she said, well, then why are you crying? So I had all kinds of stories like that people would say, I never met a woman more faithful than you. You have to write a book. So I said, about 9 years ago, I decided that I was going to start writing my book. And all the stories that I had remembered over the years, I started to write them down. And I would get frustrated, and I would say to myself, I'm not a writer. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm wasting my time. Nobody's going to read this. And I would put the book down, put the writing down, and for a year at a time. And I would go on a retreat or go away, and again I would hear that little voice say, you need to finish your book. I'd say, okay, I'll start all over again. So I would start writing again. And this one particular day, I was at Curves, and there was a woman next to me, and we started to talk. And I said I was writing a book, and she said she was writing a book. And she said, have you heard about Lisa Tenner? And I said, no, who's she? So she said, she's a writing coach. So I said, well, I'll check her out. 2 days later, a friend of mine called me who I hadn't spoken to in 10 years, and I said, I'm writing a book. And she said, well, have you heard about Lisa Tenner? And I said, well, that's 2 times in 2 days, I better call Lisa Tanner. So I called Lisa Tanner, and she said, send me what you have. So I did. And I was so scared that she was going to write back and say, Pat, you're wasting your time. There's nothing, you really can't write, and these stories are not that great, you're wasting your time. And I remember, I just held my breath until I got the email back. She emailed me back, and she said, your stories are profound. She said, I share them with my son tonight, I share them with my husband, my mother-in-law. She said, you have to write your book. Whew, I said, okay, I'll continue writing. Well then, I didn't know where I was going to get the money from. She was the most expensive, and I really wanted somebody who was really good to edit my book. So I prayed, and I said, you know, God, I really want Lisa to be my editor, and I'm going to trust you. So I wrote Lisa an email, and I said, Lisa, I'm going to hire you, and I don't know where the money is going to come from, but I'm going to trust that the money is going to come. That day, I was going through my checkbook on the computer, and I noticed that there was $1,500 in my checking account. I said, where did that come from? So I ran downstairs. My check from where I worked always was deposited into my checkbook, and I never checked it. I ran downstairs, and I had received an award that month. What was interesting is that I had received rewards in the past. Every 3 months they would give, the clinicians awards, and I had not received an award that month. They have a big ceremony, and they give out the awards, and then you get the money in your check. And I did not receive an award. And when I did receive an award in the past, it was only for $400. Now here was $1,500 in my checking account. So of course you know that I never went back and said, why did I get that award? I took it as a gift.